How does a routine assistance session turn into a metacognitive session? One of the most common challenges I'm asked by Learning Center professionals and staff is, how do I introduce metacognition to students who come only to get help to improve their test grade? This video provides a real-life example of how this progression occurs. Keep in mind that this video was created for people who have already undergone some metacognitive training. Before we get started, there are 3 keys to conducting metacognitive sessions. Number 1, be guided by your assumptions until evidence suggests otherwise. Your assumptions should be that students you encounter are capable of greater success, are committed to achieving greater success, and their struggles stem from their inability to interact with content in the appropriate ways. Based upon these assumptions, your task is to figure out what's preventing students from quality interactions. Then, to provide them an attractive solution to improve their thinking, learning, and performance in that sequence. Number 2, start with the end in mind. Develop a clear conception of how each session will end before you begin. And number 3, allow the student to steer the session. Think of yourself as a driver's ed instructor. You are giving the student accountability for the work, but you are responsible for the session. Let's pick up the session after the introductions. So what brought you here today? I'm just not making the grades that I think I should be making, given all of the studying that I do. I need to do something before my upcoming chemistry test. Notice that the student is focused on making better grades, not learning better or learning about metacognition. Okay, so what makes you believe you should be making better grades? I feel like I study all the time. I mean, it seems like I study more in 1 month here than I studied all throughout high school. The helper's question gets the learner to disclose why he believes he deserves better grades. Notice that the learner responds with feelings, not facts, so the helper should respond with feelings. The learner's comparison to high school also leaves the option of inquiring about the type of academic work he did in high school. This nugget of information is tabled as it may be useful later, but for now, the session moves on. You study all the time? Seems like it's never good enough, huh? No matter how much you do. What does studying all the time look like? Yeah, I take crazy notes in class, I rewrite my notes afterwards, I color code them so that I can remember them better, and still I can barely keep up with my class notes. Notice the helper responds with a partial restatement of the learner's feelings. This goes a long way to making the learner feel heard, understood, and toward building rapport, which is vital to the relationship. The "what does studying all the time look like?" open-ended question is a purposeful invitation to learn more. It's important to keep in mind that this dialogue has only taken 2 minutes or so thus far. In this short span of time, the helper has established a bond with the learner and has gleaned some very valuable insights. For example, the helper has learned 1, that the learner considers himself a hard worker, 2, that the learner is a good note taker, and 3, that the learner values extracting information from class. As a metacognitive helper, you should make a mental note of his usage of the word remember. You want to determine if the learner intentionally used this word or if he used it as shorthand for some other cognitive function. This triggers one of your core assumptions about why students struggle, but you don't want to act yet. Like a scientist, you need more evidence. Now that a low-resolution image of how this student functions is forming, the helper seeks evidence from the learner's actual work. The following questions are percolating in the back of the helper's mind. Is he aware of what he needs to get out of the course? If not, then the helper hypothesizes that by default, the learner is likely focusing on learning content in isolation. The helper also knows that if the learner was being tested on content knowledge, then his note-taking and effort should suffice. But the helper knows that difficult courses require students to interact with content at much deeper levels. So the second question that's percolating in the helper's mind is, what type of work is the learner doing with his notes after he captures them? Here are some options. Nothing. He feels that capturing the notes is sufficient. Storing. He is working to store the notes in his memory bank. Developing. Gathering the notes is the first stage of him using his thinking skills to further develop the material into the necessary outcomes. This option is highly unlikely, but you should always leave it as an option. The helper presses on for further evidence.
Do you mind if I look over your notes?
Not at all. While looking over his notes, the helper sees raw content that has been captured, but does not see evidence of further development.
I see that you seem to have a great note-taking system here. Can you tell me how you use your notes?
Sure. I've always been organized. I write down everything my professor says, and then after class, I combine them with the PowerPoint presentation notes. This way, I ensure that I have everything.
And then, how do you plan to use them after you have synthesized both sets of notes?
I study them. At this point, the learner runs short on responses. His vague statement that he, quote, studies his notes strengthens the helper's hypothesis that he defines studying as learning the notes. This gives the helper assurance that the learner does not have a cognitive plan for further developing his notes. At this point, what the learner has not said is just as informative as what he has said. The learner has not mentioned the course learning outcomes, any external reading materials, labs, and so forth. The learner's study formula is becoming clear. Success equals taking great notes plus studying great notes. Keep in mind that this progress has been made within 10 minutes or so of the first session. Also, note that the helper has not mentioned metacognition or introduced any metacognitive tools to this point. Lastly, notice that the helper has primarily used listening skills and observation skills up to this point. The helper is working hard internally, even as she seems to be simply asking questions. She is doing metacognitive surgery, cutting into the situation with great precision and purpose. Now it's time to externalize her internal work.
It looks like you do a great job of taking notes. You're very organized, and you're right. You should be benefiting more from your hard work. I think I noticed a few things that can help you get more out of your efforts. Do you mind if I show you these things?
What a great transition. The helper affirms the learner by referencing a specific skill, challenges the learner, and appeals to the learner all in one sequence and without using the word but. Of course. What else is he going to say after a proposition delivered so well? The helper asks the learner to take out a syllabus while she whips out the Think Well, Learn Well diagram. Now, what started out as an isolated appeal to get help improving his grade for an upcoming test has transitioned into an all-out metacognitive session. For the next part of the session, the helper conducts a metacognitive notes analysis and begins using the notes, the syllabus, and the diagram to help the student understand his current level of metacognitive functioning. Together, they define the type of cognitive work he must do while studying to perform at his desired level on tests. Eventually, the helper monitors the learner as he uses the diagram, syllabus, and notes to begin constructing his knowledge. The helper concludes the session by giving the learner his own Think Well, Learn Well diagram, along with specific actions to take that further the work they have begun. This work also connects the work that was performed in the session to the learner's current course content. The helper lets the learner know that they will begin the next session with his experience using the diagram on his own. The helper summarizes the session and asks the learner how he feels moving forward. After getting positive affirmation, the helper takes a few minutes to complete the metacognitive data log. It's important to reflect on the change that has occurred over this short span of time. Number 1, the learner initially wanted help making a better grade. Number 2, the helper offered the learner a much better deal. She showed the learner how to not only make a better grade for his upcoming test, but how to become a better learner and by consequence, make better grades overall. Number 3, The learner leaves learning focused rather than grades focused. And number 4, the learner is eager to return because the session has proven valuable to him. What started as a session to get help with an isolated matter became a metacognitive invitation. The next session should be fun. It will certainly be a metacognitive party. So let the party begin. I hope this real-life example helps you understand how to function as a metacognitive helper. The work you do is vital to elevating student performance and to eliminating academic-related retention problems. Now listen to these students and educators describe how metacognition has helped eliminate academic-related retention problems at their institution.
My name is Nick. I'm an IT major. I applied this to CSE 141. My first couple tests were 45s and 50s, and my previous test was a 90.
45, 50, then to a 90.
Big increase.
Yeah.
So I've been a tutor for some classes, so I've heard a lot about the metacognition and the different things there, but I wanted to really apply it to myself as a student, and I saw like an immediate increase in all of my scores.
I didn't do that great, but I made a high B and she made an A just by doing these things.
Wonderful, congrats.
And that's why we're here. So.
Good. A's and B's are good.
And I've learned, especially after the second session, how to better listen and how to be able to extract the knowledge that I need.
I applied this to med-surg. I'm a nursing major. Usually if you make an 80 on a med-surg test, you consider it pretty good. My first test I made a 74 on, and then my last test, which just completed about a week ago, it ended up being a 92.7 was my final grade.
Yeah,
So,
big jump.
oh yes, the highest test I've ever made on a med-surg test.
Yeah.
I'm Botany. I am a junior here and my major is biology. I applied this to organic chemistry and physics. On my first organic chemistry class, I had a 59.5, and on my final test, I had a 85. And then I applied to physics 2, and my first physics test I did terrible. I got 49, but then on my last test I got 85.
It started with some students that were being referred to us, and they were earning 65, 68s on their exams. And over the last month, they have bumped those up to 90s, between 90 and 95.
I started with a Bio 106 course tutoring. We didn't have a lot of students there, so I'm doing 110, which is the general level for non-majors, but basically it's helped me a lot process my thinking to help break it down better, break down that material for those students to better understand, and helping them with their study habits, helping them learn how to process things as well. Their test scores have significantly increased, and I think their studying habits are a lot better now. I've seen just a big impact within the last several weeks as they've been coming to tutoring once a week. The students have had a better time in tutoring, and they come a lot more prepared. They feel like they know the material a lot.
Several tests. I actually went through a frustrating period where I couldn't, pass it more than the D over any test. It helped me want to study more than just the times I was studying. I don't think I made under a B lately in any exams or stuff like that.
From D's to B's?
D's to B's.
I noticed with the intro biology course that I was teaching that even though I kept given more A's, the means I've gone up on all the tests. They have. I've not had to apply curves to all the tests, and when I have, they're smaller. I've not had to apply as much of a curve.